It was chaos at dawn on New Year's Eve, 1862, as thousands of Confederate soldiers attacked across these Murfreesboro, Tennessee fields. Union troops, including hundreds from northwest Indiana, were warming themselves over campfires and preparing breakfast when the Battle of Stones River began. It would become the Civil War's eighth bloodiest battle, with more than 3,000 men killed in fighting on December 31, 1862, through January 2, 1863. The 73rd Indiana Infantry lost, to death or injury, about a third of the 300 men the regiment put on the field that day. Among the regiment's dead in some of the battle's initial attacks were Crown Point Private John H. Early and Winfield Private Edward Welch. Both men are among the thousands buried at Stones River National Cemetery. The 73rd and the right flank of the Union's Army of the Cumberland reeled in chaos, with some taking shelter behind cannons in this position. This position was held by a special artillery battery funded by the Chicago Board of Trade. The Board of Trade cannons helped curb some of the initial Confederate charges. Meanwhile, troops on the Union left were digging in for one of the most impressive stands in the Civil War. Starting at 10 a.m. on December 31st, the Confederates attacked the Union left across these fields in 4 brutal waves throughout the day. The 9th Indiana Volunteer Infantry, including men from Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties, stood firm in this area of the battlefield that would become known as Hell's Half Acre because of the brutal fighting that occurred there. The men of the Bloody Ninth, as they were nicknamed throughout the war, were part of Colonel William B. Hazen's brigade during the battle. It was the only part of the Union line to hold fast all day, never retreating. Among the local men at Hell's Half Acre was Valparaiso's Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Suman, who helped command the Bloody Ninth from horseback. Sitting atop a horse and riding among the lines at Hell's Half Acre made Suman an easy target for Confederate infantry. This is the Valparaiso grave of Colonel Isaac Suman. We're about 470 miles away from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where Colonel Suman helped command the 9th Indiana Infantry at the Battle of Stones River. Now, Colonel Suman took 2 bullets during his command at Hell's Half Acre, one to the arm and one to the rib cage, and he kept on commanding from the field. He was the epitome of the guy that shows up sick to work. Despite being shot in the arm and rib cage, Colonel Suman received only brief and crude medical treatment, remaining in the field to command his local boys of the Bloody Ninth at Hell's Half Acre. Suman was aided by Westville Army Chaplain John Whitehead, who pried a Confederate bullet out of Suman's side and helped bandage him up so the colonel could stay in the field with his men. Whitehead's valor in pulling others injured at Hell's Half Acre to the back of the line for medical treatment during the battle didn't go unnoticed by upper command. Whitehead later received the Medal of Honor for his bravery that day. Though it started in disaster for the Union, the Boys in Blue eventually prevailed at the Battle of Stones River, preserving Union access to the vital Nashville Pike rail line, which ran directly through Hell's Half Acre. Murfreesboro would become an important Union fort and supply center for the duration of the war. January 1863 news accounts in the Valparaiso Republican newspaper show Suman returned home for a short time following the Battle of Stones River. He required surgery to remove rib bone fragments that were splintered inward from a Confederate musket ball. But within weeks of the battle, he was back with his men. Suman and his commanding officer, Colonel William Hazen, met and determined to build a monument at Hell's Half Acre, honoring the dead and the hard-fighting survivors of this most crucial position on the battlefield. Hazen's monument, as it is now known, rests in the heart of Hell's Half Acre today as the oldest standing Civil War monument in the country, having been built in 1863. Suman, who would be promoted to full colonel and commander of the Bloody Ninth in 1863, directed a contingent of men from the Bloody Ninth to build the limestone block structure, which is flanked by more than 40 graves of men of the brigade who remain buried near where they fell in the battle. Though 3,000 men died at the Battle of Stones River, many men made it home. A lot of them came back here to northwest Indiana, like Private Joseph Sweet, who fought in Colonel Suman's Bloody Ninth Indiana Infantry during the Civil War. The graves of dozens of men from the 9th can be found at old pioneer cemeteries throughout Porter and LaPorte counties. And graves of the men of the 73rd Indiana who suffered major casualties early in the battle, can be found throughout Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties. Among the Stones River veterans who made it home was Crown Point's Sergeant Oliver Wheeler. He was the brother of locally famous Colonel John Wheeler, who died in the Eastern Theater of the Civil War at the Battle of Gettysburg. Following the Battle of Stones River, Oliver Wheeler nearly died from a different Civil War threat more deadly than enemy bullets. He contracted typhoid fever, an often lethal but common camp disease of the era. Oliver Wheeler survived the sickness only to learn in July 1863 that his brother had been killed while commanding the 20th Indiana Infantry at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Battle of Stones River, where 3,000 men of both the Union and Confederate sides died, is often overshadowed by the more severe carnage of Gettysburg, where nearly 8,000 were killed in 3 days of fighting. But Stones River remains one of the top 10 bloodiest battles of the war. Hazen's Monument, the Stones River National Cemetery, and the National Battlefield in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, help us remember this crucial battle that had such a strong tie to the fighting men of Northwest Indiana. I encourage anyone interested in our nation's most pivotal war to visit the Stones River National Battlefield in Murfreesboro, which is located about 40 minutes east of Nashville. It's a fantastic way to connect with our region's important role in the nation's bloodiest war.